Hunt for Greatness podcast.
You guys, welcome to the Hunt for Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Lex Hunt, and I got my man Cameron Smith on. What's up, Cameron Smith?
Hello, Lex Hunt. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good.
You're good? This is our full disclosure, guys. This is our second time doing this because I had some memory card issues.
Mm-hmm. This is a re-record. So some of the conversation might feel forced.
I'm going to force Cameron to talk about what I want him to talk about. Yeah. I'm going to take all our good stuff from the first one. Thanks for being willing to come back.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for being willing to have me back.
I'm just not willing to put out something that's not up to par with where I'm at now.
Yeah. I'm starting to think that there's nothing wrong with the audio. I just did a bad job.
Dude, you did so bad the first time. I need you to do completely different this time. Can you just do better?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to answer the questions because last time we had a conversation which on surface probably looked like it was a good conversation, but I just kept lying.
You lied to me the whole. I knew you did. Like these headphones. Actually, I've got something right here. You can't see it, but it tells me if you're lying or not. And it was a red light the whole time we talked last time.
Yeah.
Could you just tell the truth this time?
If I knew you had some sort of lie detecting thing, I wouldn't have tried to pull the wool over your eyes.
Well, now this usually works. This ninja sword, this samurai sword, usually works. Like people don't usually lie to me because
they're worried that if they do, you're going to cut them.
Yeah, but you still lied to me, dude, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So, hey, second time around, I'm going to be honest this time.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, Cameron, you wrote a book, and that's the reason that you came to the podcast. Let's first talk about your book, and let's talk about where can people find this book? Where can they buy this book?
So, it is on Amazon. Camthology is the name of it. A surrealist indulgence in egomania and the over-romanticization of the opposite sex. It's a collection of short stories and poems that I wrote during my time in college at UNCW studying creative writing and film. So you can search that on Google or Amazon, and you might be able to find it. I've had trouble finding it by searching it, but otherwise, best way to definitely find it is look me up on like social media, Instagram. I'm Cumsmut, CUMSMUT. I got a link in my bio that will definitely get you right to it. Otherwise, if you're local to Wilmington or not local, you can also just reach out to me directly and buy a copy directly from me, and I can ship it to you. Or if you're local, I'll just bring it to you.
Yeah, and if you hit me up for a copy, I'm going to add $5 because I'm a middleman. I got to make my profit, you know what I'm saying? I'll hit Cam up. He's the plug. Yeah. You know what I mean? I got to make my $5.
If you want to buy a more expensive copy and help Lex out, then, hit him up, not me.
Sweet. Yeah, and I got this copy from you last time, which is awesome, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you just signed it in blood.
Yeah,
thank you.
I nicked my finger on the door when
I
went to
bleeding,
use the bathroom.
Bro.
Yeah, I know.
Your blood is thin right now, bro. Yeah. It's just pumping out.
Do you want me to stamp it back since I wiped it off?
Yeah, dude, stamp it, bro. Yeah, sign that thing in
blood,
baby.
On your book.
So what made you decide? Hold this up just for this camera to see. That's what you're looking for, guys. Whenever you're looking to buy this book, that's what you're looking for. Cool. And what made you decide to release all this stuff? Because there's some really personal stuff in there, that we talked about after the podcast. So what made you, what gave you the motivation or what the bravery, courage to be like, I don't even care, just release it? What?
Yeah, so I'd kind of talk a little bit about in the introduction, like while I was in college still writing this, like towards, I think, my last year, I had in my head, I realized I had all this writing compiled over the years of those creative writing classes, and I was like, I think it'd be a good idea to put a book out. And the original idea was to have the collection of short stories and poems chronologically like they are in this book, but then interweave each year or semester a nonfiction narrative about what was going on in my life around the time to like maybe put context to some of these things. And also just have that as like an element of what you're reading, so you have like fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, all sorts of stuff in here.
That's the wind, dude.
Yeah.
I don't have a huge dog out there.
A raccoon trying to get in or something. So I wanted to do that, and I started doing that. I started writing it. It was like, all right, well, I'm going to start writing the semesters chronologically, and I'm going to catch up to the present day eventually, and then that'll be interesting. And then I think I made it like 3 semesters or 3 chapters in, and my efforts fizzled out. I just kind of decided, I don't know if this is a great idea. I don't know if I really am ready to write like this about my life. I don't know if I really ever I feel like this is a lot of effort I'm putting in, and I'm really uncertain of whether I want to put that out or not, or if I'm really able to write about my life in a way that's meaningful or useful or entertaining, or it's not just, I don't know, too much, or this is excessive, or the book is already 186 pages without that, right? So if I did that too, it would probably be nearly double that. So that would be a pretty big book, and I don't know, various reasons kind of came in, and my efforts fizzled out, and I decided not to do that. And then I had in the back of my mind, I was like, well, maybe I could just put the collection out by itself. And I thought about doing that too, and then of course I finished college, graduated, and I moved to LA, and I just had other stuff I was doing, and I was just, there's plenty of projects that I'm more certain I want to do and get out. And then I think around this time last year, I suddenly felt a motivation to get this together.
Yeah. Sorry, I locked you out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cam.
That was someone trying to get out.
Yeah, was it? Was she trying to get in the garage? I locked the glass door. I'm sorry.
It's hard.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm so unprofessional. Cameron's probably like, I'm never coming back here ever.
Hey, how about this? We put a pin in this, I leave, and then you... You let me know when you got it together.
Yeah. Which will be never, dude. Never. I'll never have it together.
Yeah, so last year I got the manuscript together. It wasn't a ton of work to do that. And then I had reached out to my ex-girlfriend who we spent a lot of time together for a good chunk of the time that I was in college and making this book, and I met her in creative writing, and she's a great writer. In fact, I really admired her writing in our classes, and that was, I think, kind of how flirtation with us started. Was we'd do these workshops, and she was one of the only students in there who I genuinely complimented. It was I really like your style. But anyway, I asked her, I was like, hey, since you probably know me better than almost anyone on the planet, and you like to write and you're a good writer, I would love it if I'm putting this book together, if you would write a foreword for me. And she said, yes. But then, I never really heard back from her. She just kind of procrastinated doing it and then just never did it. And then I think ultimately decided, hey, I don't know if I'm really comfortable writing about you at this point. And so I was like, fair enough. And then I think it was then months later, after I was kind of in the groove, ready to put something like that, and then I came back around to the idea I don't think I even really want this out anyway.
So you're wrestling with the idea of even putting this book out.
Yeah, there's been a major story or arc of resistance inside me towards putting it out, and because of exactly what you said, there's really personal stuff in here.
You get really vulnerable in this book.
Yeah, this shows a side of me that is very private. It's very embarrassing. It's kind of gross, especially in context of seeing it all back to back. The amount of, that subtitle, surrealist indulgence in egomania and the over-romanticization of the opposite sex, especially that over-romanticization thing. That's the thing that, to me, is really embarrassing, is seeing how much of a simp I appear to be from one poem after another about how frustrated I am in this realm of unrequited love, and being heavily infatuated with girls who ultimately want nothing to do with me. And that's a pattern in my life, and that's a thing that manifests itself to some degree in my stand-up and music and maybe film stuff. But I feel I kind of artfully incorporate that, and it's not overbearing and anything like that. But this, it's it's so prominent and so raw and so forthright. It's almost, it just kind of it's embarrassing, and I was not certain I wanted that side of me to be revealed and publicly consumable. But then for some reason, this past month, and what I I jokingly say may just be another manic episode or whatever. I have no idea if I really am bipolar or manic. I don't want to go. That's the thing. I don't want to go to therapy to find out what I have.
Right.
Because then I find out, and that's my new identity. Like, I'm bipolar. Okay? I'm fucking bipolar. I am a psychopath. Okay?
Diagnosed.
Yeah, I am diagnosed with psychopathy. Okay? I can do this. No, I don't. So, well, yeah, jokingly when I say the manic episode, I was just like, you know what, fuck it. The thing's done, it's ready. All I gotta do is design the cover at this point and just put it out. And ultimately, it's like, I'd really like to have a nice book that I can put on my shelf that I can pull out years down the line, and all this work is organized and I can read it myself. Or maybe share it with some people, you know? But like, and then, you know, maybe at the same time I make it available publicly on Amazon and let people know I bought a book or made a book, and they can buy it from me if they want, and maybe we'll find out if anyone's even interested in that. My guess would be probably, if anyone, not many people, but I've been pretty surprised at the reception of putting something like that out, and there being a good number of people that are reaching out. Like, yeah, let me get a copy of that.
Yeah, you've had a good response from what I've gathered from you.
Mm-hmm. And I think I pointed this out to you last time. It's very funny to me because my demographic, between my comedy and music and everything, like there's girls that like my stuff for sure, but it's mostly like probably 80% dudes, 20% girls. This is drastically inverted. It's like 90% women are reaching out to me to buy this. There's like, you know, a few dudes.
Well, women want to know what actually. This is kind of like your journal or your diary. Or like this is a 5 years, right? 5 years of writing. So it's taking you. It's you probably see a transformation in the book, like of yourself. From the beginning to the even year to year, maybe.
Yeah, well, that was something we didn't really talk about last time that I had thought a little more about, especially in the context of our original conversation the first time I was on the podcast, and we talked about the meditation thing, because that moment in my life where I got really depressed and then decided to pick up a meditation practice, that happens in this book. Like, you know, this is years 2014 through the end of 2018, and it was mid 2017 when that moment happened for me. So I personally feel like when that moment happened for me, my life and experience of life changed very drastically
through the meditation.
Yes.
Transcendental meditation.
Yes.
Right.
But I also kind of felt like I felt like my art output kind of lagged behind in its effect. Like, I changed a lot, but I kind of kept doing what I've always done creatively. And then I just started feeling different about it and then modifying it a little more slowly. So I feel like there's some level of reflection of that shift from the 2017 to the 2018 stuff. I feel like it just gets maybe more focused and polished naturally, maybe, or a little more clear and without fluff. Maybe I don't really know. It's kind of hard for me to pinpoint exactly how the work in this book particularly reflects that change for me. But it is interesting. I find it very interesting to read this thing in full together and see what I described in the introduction as like a simultaneously very disturbing but also endearing picture of myself. But yeah, for some reason I just decided that fear of that being out there and like not wanting people to see that is just dumb for me to not put something out like that.
100%.
Yeah.
So these are the years of your life through like 20 years old through 25 years old? Or roundabout?
I would say 18, 19 through 23.
Which is a weird time in your life,
yeah.
dude, because you go from high school where you have like kind of an established who you think you are, and it's like your head's popping out of your ass for the next like 10 years almost. Like my head's still so far up my own ass, but it's like it's popping out, and I'm like, oh, this is just this is who I've thought I was this entire time I've been alive, and it's just this creation that I've made in my head of, oh, this is me, this is who I am, but it's just been like not a mirage, but like a false perception of who I think I am. You know, so like 18 through 20, what'd you say?
23.
23, I think just that in and of itself, you have a book here that kind of records a part of your life for most people that's weird.
Yeah, and from an angle that's not usually captured. And that was another thing I think mentioned too before, is like this way, because I wrote all these things in the context of them being for classes that I'm sharing with like a small group of people that in my mind I'm not sharing anywhere else beyond that.
This book's never going to get made at the point
right,
when you're
right.
right.
I'm not thinking this is going in a book. I'm not thinking this is going to be work I share with anyone else. So it is this stuff that like in the end, it's almost like I tricked myself into writing this more private and vulnerable side of myself, because I never thought I would be sharing this with anyone else.
I think that's why it makes the book special.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, it makes it unique. It makes it special because you're not writing it.
Yeah. I'm not putting this inherent pressure on myself of like, this is going to be public and forever. You know?
It's so different from your comedy and your music. I mean, of course, we talked about poetry last time, kind of plays a part in your music and your rap albums, because rap is poetry, you know? So it's like, but me knowing you, and I know some of you guys that watch this, you don't know Cam and you haven't seen his comedy, but like, this isn't like your comedy and it's not like your music. This is a totally different side of you that most people, if somebody saw you do comedy, they're probably like, that dude is crazy and probably a little off his rocker, you know, because your comedy is wild. Like, you have wild comedy, and I love your comedy.
Yeah, no, if you meet me through, like, just seeing me on stage and not talking to me in person, you're going to think I'm a bad person. Most people.
Well, because you're joking about, like, the worst things that go through people's heads that they just push down and they don't.
Right.
Which that is kind of similar to your book, because your book talks about things like suicide and, like, maybe, you know, unrequited love, like wanting someone that doesn't want you back, like things that people don't want to necessarily talk about.
Right.
Like it seems like if you would have written this book knowing that it was going to be a book, there probably would be a lot more ego involved and a lot less vulnerability involved. Because I think to get vulnerable, you kind of have to, you got to kind of disregard your ego. In my opinion, to be really vulnerable, you kind of can't have too much ego involved, because ego will not allow me to be vulnerable with people. Yeah,
and I think that's what you're saying right there about ego is the exact, it's synonymous with the pressure that I'm talking about. Like, as I talked about before, the difference between how I would approach writing rap lyrics around the same time that I was writing these poems. It was just writing the poetry was so much easier, because there was zero pressure expectation in my mind for what this thing needs to be. There's no rules about rhyme scheme or, you know, trying to write things that are really clever, or it didn't matter if it was genuine or not. It was just like mostly looked at as experimentation. Just like I'm playing around and all I have to do is put words on the page here, where like I do that and then next day I go write, you know, trying to put together a song, and I have all this pressure, like, oh, I got these, you know, 3 albums I put out before then, and these are like the songs people really like and think are good. And like, what did those have about them? Oh, they're packed with these rhymes, and like I got to really think, like, oh, is that clever? Is that funny? Is that hard? You know, and like there's just none of that with writing the poem. Or like, you know, also the thing that's inherent too with the rap thing. Like I have this character, Cam Boy Smith, and I'm trying to write for that character and build this image carefully. Like it is one big sculpture I'm working on over time, where this is just like, it's a formless self. I don't give a fuck about image at all. I'm not even thinking about that, because again, I'm not thinking this is going anywhere. So it's like, this is a product of, you're going to build an image no matter what you do. It's, you can either build it consciously or unconsciously. And this, the amalgamation of this work together, the image that yields was not a conscious building. It was like an unconscious, I'm just fucking around and writing and expressing and thinking about things. And there is it does bounce between those short stories, like really dumb, silly shit that has nothing to do with me being genuine. It's really me just kind of making a mockery out of literature.
It really is.
Yeah. It's like, it's writing it to fuck with the class that I'm about to read it to or turn it into and get some laughs. But then there is, I would say, that's maybe a third of this book at most, where the other 2/3 is me just taking a feeling or an emotional state I'm in at the time of sitting down to write and expressing it in one way or another, me trying to figure out what angle I want to come at it through, or what format or anything like that.
Do you have to be in a certain mentality to write a story like Sancho's first prison shower, which is in the book? Like, is it just something like, oh, time to sit down and write, I got that energy, I have that thing in my head? Like, are your wheels always turning? Is stuff always going on up there? How's your brain working when this goes down? I know some of them were assignments. You were kind of forced.
Yeah.
But
they're all essentially assignments.
But you were talking about how you had your freedom to do.
Yeah. So it was mostly assignments without many rules. Like, most of the poems, it was, you need to write a new poem this week and turn it in for us to workshop. That's it. The poem can be anything. And then sometimes you get something like, all right, this week we want you to write Shakespearean sonnets. Or this week we want you to write haikus. And that was rare. We rarely got a specified format. The short stories in 2017, which Sancho takes his first prison shower, it's a bunch of these like 2 or 3 page short stories kind of in a row in 2017. They're all for this editing for publication class that I took. And those assignments, those borders were mostly about punctuation. Like, this one you need to use 10 semicolons. This one you need to use 15 em dashes. And then other than that, there was no rule. And it needs to be within 2 or 3 pages. Maybe that was it for rules. And those, just like the class, because I think we would read them together and stuff like that, and it was just like, that class was very fun. That teacher had a good sense of humor and liked to bring humor in class. So it was like, oh, I'm mostly going to write funny short stories here. And so that's why that string of short stories, they're all really ridiculous and silly. So that would, and it's this pressure of having to turn something in at a certain time, finding the time to do it. I'm not really concerned too much about headspace, because it really is like, when you have an assignment that's due. I am certainly like a procrastinator and do things at last minute under that context. But I don't know. I feel like there's definitely some times where, like, with the assignments from creative writing, I didn't always procrastinate. I sometimes was excited. And I was in a headspace. And I definitely know a lot of times I had, like, the situations of unrequited love I was writing about were going on. So, like, it was like, you need to turn in a new poem this week. I'd go home that night and I'd be in an emotional state regarding what's going on with some girl who's, leading me on, not texting me back, or going hot and cold with me. And I'm in the state. I'm sad and I'm frustrated, and I have this image that has nothing to do with it in my head, and I'm going to combine the things and write about it.
Do you think that writing about those type of things, do you think it helped you process what was going on in your like, with your feelings and with your thoughts? Do you think it helped, or do you think it's a double-sided, what do they say, double-sided sword? Isn't that something?
Double-edged sword?
Double-edged sword, yeah.
I don't know for sure. Sometimes I feel like it was relieving to write these things out, but sometimes I feel like I'd go overboard with it, and I was just reinforcing the negative emotion, or like focusing too much on this thing. Like, I think I write one poem about one event and then I'm done. That's probably fine. That's probably therapeutic. But I spend several months writing about the same fucking thing, like the poems in 2018. There's a lot of them that are about, maybe not the same event, but multiple events with the same person, and I'm just really going on about it. That might have been more destructive and more holding on to of negative emotions longer than necessary. You know,
Well, that's very important thing to learn, especially if you're into writing. Did you realize that was going on as it was happening, or is this something you look back and you're like, oh, well, I kind of went on writing too long about, like what you just explained. Did you know it was going on as it was happening?
I think to some extent, but not, like, the further I got away from it, the fuller the extent I understood that relationship. I think I knew without being able to articulate it at a certain point while I was writing it, because it just purely how bad I felt. Like, it was just
You're just seeing the small.
yeah, like it was like, you know, there's stuff going on in the years before 2018 that I'm writing about that's similar, and I write it and I'm done. I move on. It was like it wasn't just a little droplet or a little bubble of sadness. It was like a whole ocean. I was like drowning in, and to the point where like I'm not just like a little sad. I'm like going crazy. I'm like mentally ill, upset, and I feel physically sick. Yeah, I think that and I think it's also cool too that 2018 being the last year, you have this. It almost feels like the work together, the abstracted story, is you have these themes that are just kind of weaving in and out of maybe obsession with myself or goofiness, and then unrequited love. Maybe those are the three things, and it's kind of interweaving between those. And it's just this train driving, and then the last year is like a train wreck. It's like this is being pushed to the absolute edge and being like, oh my God, this is disturbing at this point, you know. I don't know if I'm just rambling.
No, you're making total sense.
Yeah,
I just want to let you complete your thought. Yeah. So, when did meditation come into play here? Like, did this whole being overwhelmed with like your feelings and your like being so low, did the meditation come after that? Was that a tool that you used to get through that, or did it all that transcendental meditation that happened after?
So yeah, the transcendental meditation started towards the end of 2017.
Okay.
And I felt like, if I can remember as best I can, I remember when I first started doing that, my life, like my outlook on life improved very drastically, very quickly. Where I was much more appreciative and grateful of just being alive and having free will, and like just what was right in front of me, and things that I would usually ignore, not pay attention to, were suddenly very beautiful to me. And then kind of towards the end of that year, and then like as 2018 started, this situation, which I write a lot about in the 2018 poems, manifested. And I feel like what meditation for me in that experience did immediately was like it just brought me closer to the front of my face in terms of experiencing reality. And it started making the like shield type persona or mask that I put on kind of come down, and I started paying attention to and revealing and uncovering a more genuine side of myself, not just through this work, but like in real life and interacting with people, and just thinking in my head, like realizing what is my idea and what isn't, and what's just like social constructs. So that stuff started to come apart, and I think because it was bringing me closer to my genuine self, I was more vulnerable. So, and then I think a good thing started happening to me, but the good thing just was twisted in this way, in this unrequited, well, this was a requited love situation, but it was complicated, and it ultimately didn't work out, and it caused a lot of like frustration for me, and a lot of confusion, and a lot of not knowing what to do, and heartbreak in a very unexpected way, in a way I'd never experienced before. And so it was just a lot for me to process, and I wasn't doing a good job processing it for a while. And it was kind of like trying to funnel that confusion and frustration and heartbreak and ache into creative work. Like I was making songs and writing poems, and I managed to maybe play with it even in some of the film stuff I was working on around that time. I don't think I did too much in stand-up with it. I might have, though. But yeah, does that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. In your book, all the stuff that you just explained, there's a range of emotions in this book. And I think that a man being able to talk about those things is important, man. Like, as a man, we try to act like we're all tough, and we don't get depressed and sad or upset when a woman doesn't have reciprocating feelings for us, but that makes us upset as men. And I think that it's so important that, I don't want to get all emotional, but I think it's so important that we have it. Yeah, I don't want to show no emotions. Yeah. Okay, but
hold on, Lex. You're like, look, I think it's very important and good for men to express their emotions, but I don't want to express mine.
Yeah, I don't feel nothing, and I'm always happy or mad. I'm always mad or happy, okay? But, yeah, it's just like to be able to write about those things and communicate those things. I mean, men commit suicide all the time because they don't know how to communicate their feelings. And, I try to teach my kids that, but sometimes I'm disconnected from my own emotions, so it's like, if I'm living that way, it's hard for me to teach other people to not, or younger kids. Like, hey man, tell me what's making you sad. Let's talk about it. Like, you don't have to dwell on it, but we can talk about it. Right. I think that's important that you put something out that's, you have things in there where you could be judged in the way that you wrote or that you had a feeling. That people could judge you from some of these poems. I've read some of them, and I'm like, wow, holy shit. This dude really got vulnerable in this book. So, yeah, I just think that you've put something out that's important here, and it could help somebody else get vulnerable and not harm themselves. This book could help people. I know that there's some ridiculous stuff in there, and it's funny. Yeah. But you have a range of emotions in there. Like, people, when they read this book, they're going to feel happy, sad. They're going to laugh. They're going to cry. It's like, it's cool that you put something out like that, man.
And I think it's fun, too, to be able to read it, for the first time and not really know when you're starting a piece what it's going to be. You just read a story that's so ridiculous and made you laugh a lot. And then you jump into the next thing, and it's a poem that's incredibly dark and unfunny.
Sick. Yeah, that's what you're going to get when you buy this book.
Yeah, you have no idea really what you're walking into. or it's, it's a little poem that's about nothing.
You're going to read me something this time?
Yeah, you want me to?
I want you to. I don't care if you read the same story you read me last time.
I'll probably read something different.
Yeah, read me something.
But I do want to say, too, what you're talking about with, expressing emotions and teaching your son, too, to be open with his emotions and that kind of thing. I do feel like it's almost synonymous with this balance that we're talking about with the poems being therapeutic versus overboard and just reinforcing an emotion you don't need to hold on to. Or it's I think that just shows a versatility of emotional temperament. There are people who are genuinely emotional and that they have some sort of social pressure to suppress and be quiet or ignore their emotions. And like you said, it happens a lot with men. People might describe that as toxic masculinity or whatever. It's the suppression of emotions.
Right.
I don't like using terms like that because I think they're kind of gay.
I was thinking that when you said it. I can't say stuff like that, dude. You can get away with it. I can't.
Yeah, with that accent, you can't.
Toxic masculinity, that sounds kind of gay.
But But at the same time, like, I think it's also, like, beautiful that people have that temperament where they legitimately aren't that emotional. Like, where they're just not affected. They don't give a fuck. Like it's a dude who just women don't like him. He's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm moving on. I'm moving to the next fucking thing. Pussy's pussy. It's like, like, that is fucking... I respect. Sometimes I wish I was more like that. Sometimes I wish I didn't give a shit and I wasn't so emotional. And sometimes I don't know whether that is like a temperamental thing that I have more control over it than I think. Like, if I were to just decide, you know what, this is illusory. I'm reinforcing this by writing from this emotional perspective constantly, and I'm just making myself more of a fucking pussy by doing this. And if I stop and I start writing tough guy poems, maybe I'll start being a guy who ultimately doesn't give a shit that I'm not attractive to women or the women I like or whatever, or that I'm not so affected or upset about being lonely or single or any of that, you know? And I actually kind of do feel like that is the difference between... I mean, one, it's a big difference between me prior to having a legitimate relationship with someone, which happens again in the middle of this book, like years 2016 and 17. Half of 2015, most of 2016, with someone, and I know that my attitude shifted from being in, like, having a major existential fear that no one's ever going to love me in this romantic way. Like, no girl I'm attracted to is ever going to reciprocate these feelings. And then it happened. And then I spent, like, a solid year and then, like, another year kind of off and on with someone who totally reciprocated it. And I really admired this person and really admired the relationship. I still think back about it like, oh my God, I'm probably never going to have that again. But it was after coming out of that my attitude went from, like, okay, I want this, but I don't want it for the sake of having it. I want it if it's right.
Right, yeah.
I only want this if it's with the right person. And ultimately having the philosophy of, like, look, being single is far better than being with someone who it's not right with.
Like, miserable.
Right.
Yeah.
It's way better. However, being with the right person is way better than being single.
Facts.
So that's and because of that, the way I approach dating now, I really am going at a place like, I want to go on a date or a few dates with someone and find out, do we get along, you know? And if we don't, I don't want to pursue. I have no problem being like, yeah, let's stop. You know, let's not.
I think it comes with being older and experiencing those heartbreaks and heartaches and just knowing that because when that used to happen when you're younger, you feel like that's the end of the world.
Right.
Like, the world is over. This person, that's my person. They don't love me back.
Right.
So I think that it just comes with experience. Like, older people, you can tell, like, things don't usually bother them as much as it bothers a younger person, because the first time experiencing anything feels way amplified. You know, but once it's happened once my boat hadn't started up a few times, I'm like, it's probably this, it's probably that. But the first couple times that my boat doesn't start and I'm at the ramp and I got up at 5:30, I'm like cussing. Like, this is bullshit, you know? Yeah. But, I mean, just as like a stupid thing to compare it to is something like that. Like, things that's happened to me a few times, I'm like, I've been through it before, I've gotten through it fine. So, if it happens again, not that big of a deal. I just think it comes with age and experience, you know. Yeah. There's no replacement for actual life experience. Like, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can watch videos, but there's nothing that can replace you actually making. Out there and doing it. There's nothing. That's why I tell people in my fishing videos, I'm like, look, man, you can watch these videos all you want, but until you go out here and fail, you're not going to learn anything. Right. Because it took me, fish, brother. Get out there and fish, brother, and don't feel no emotions. Yeah, so it takes me five trips to make a video where I actually catch fish, but they don't see the 5 trips where I don't catch anything. You know, so it's like social media. It's just not real. Like, I see your highlight reel of your life, but I don't see you not getting the job. I don't see you getting fired. Mm-hmm. You know, those things. We don't post about those things. So in a world where you see a highlight reel of someone's life, it's cool that you've released a book that covers 5 years of the ups and downs of your own life.
Yeah, a lot of the downs. I don't think I talk too much about the ups.
Yeah, a lot of it. So it's like, this is the opposite of what we're getting every day from our social media consumption, which is cool that you wrote a book like that.
Mm-hmm.
Read me something out of it, dude.
Yeah.
What are you gonna read me, bro? Do you know already?
I actually didn't think about it this time.
You thought about what was the name of that story you read me the first time?
The sports bar.
The sports bar. That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
How about because I said I was going to do this last time, I ended up not. I'll read the first couple pages of Zach and the Slug. This is the first short story of the book.
Okay, cool.
This is about my real friend, Zach Napinski.
Okay.
But the story is fiction. But no, Zach Napinski is a real man.
Shouts to Zach.
All right. Zach and the Slug. Zach Napinski was a respectable young man. He was unbreakable. Not once throughout his life had he come close to losing his cool, having an anxiety attack, or a nervous breakdown. No, Zachary was the quintessential example of someone who had their shit together. It seemed odd to most people that Zach had never once broken his dual-tone character of dankness and chillness. These were adjectives pretty commonly used by others to describe Zach. Dank and chill. How, though? How was Zach generally accepted by the majority as the dankest and the chillest of the village? One could easily argue that it was because the man could tray flip a six-step on a skateboard and catch a bass with his bare hands. Or perhaps it was because he was able to get 16 likes on a tweet which consisted of nothing but a slash face. Just a simple colon followed by a backslash. Something we're all capable of typing on our keyboards, but Zach could manage to get 16 whole likes when posting such an emoticon from his Twitter account. I, on the other hand, would argue that Zach's dankness and chillness were established by a much deeper cause. I believe it was because of his ability to communicate with animals. Zach first discovered his ability when he was a young bub, about age 13. He was outside training for his first big skateboard competition when he embarrassingly miscalculated the amount of speed he needed to land the jump on his homemade ramp. He fell onto the pavement and skinned his knee. Zachary wanted to keep practicing, but his little brother Travis forbid him from skateboarding until his wound healed. Our hero was bed-stricken for weeks. Besides the occasional visit from Travis bringing him a medium-sized bowl of Campbell's chicken noodle soup on a wooden tray, the only being keeping him company was his dog, Marley. Days went by where Marley would lay beside Zach without saying a word. And Zach would do the same. They would both stare at the television, watching reruns of Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory. Finally, Marley couldn't stand the silence, so she broke it. She looked up at the 13-year-old boy and said, "Zachary Leanne Napinski, I respect you." A tear shot out of Zach's eye and landed right on his wounded knee. The salt from his tear worked like magic, and his wound healed instantly. Zach leapt from the bed and said to his canine friend, "You know what, Marley? I think it's time that I get back on the skateboard and show this town just what I'm made of." Marley smiled and shot a tear right out of her eye, across the room and into Zach's mouth. During the summer of 2010, Zach spent most of his time talking to dogs. He actually began to become relatively apathetic towards developing his relationships with other humans. I had the privilege of sitting next to Zach in my English class during my junior year of high school. Slowly but surely, Zach and I began to become friends. He was reluctant to open up to me at first, but eventually I coaxed him into chilling. He handed me his phone and told me to add my number to his contacts. When I scrolled through his phone, I was taken by surprise. More than 80% of his contacts were dogs. Dogs are people we went to school with. Dogs are people we didn't go to school with. Stray dogs, dogs at the pet store, dogs at the pound, and even dogs I didn't know. I bit my lip, added my number to his contacts, and handed him his phone back. I tried as hard as I could not to make a big deal out of it, but it was difficult. I knew one day I would confront him on the issue. However, at the moment, I knew it was too early in the friendship. Addressing such a sensitive subject during the time seemed inappropriate. Alright, I think I could read like one or two more paragraphs of this. Oh, I don't know. Actually,
What is it?
I'm just trying to find a good stopping point here. Look, I'll maybe stop after another page. All right. I'll just read the whole book to you. All right. It was a lukewarm early morning. The air smelled like honeydew. Most everyone had just gotten home from their last day of the school year. It was summer of 2012, and Zach Napinski, the man, the myth, the legend, was my best friend. He had a voice like a tuna fish, had legs like a small jar of cinnamon, and was tender like the intestines of a baby chicken. He had just finished giving me a haircut in my backyard. I told him to give me a haircut like Rihanna, and boy, he nailed it. That night, the hot summer sun had left the beautiful night sky, much like my father left my mother when I was just nearly a 4-year-old child. The only difference is my father didn't ever come back. I still never hear from him. I believe I am a lesser person than I should be, due to the lack of a male role model during the developmental stages of my youth. But I digress. The night was cool with a mild breeze. Zach and I were sitting on top of the pharmacy in downtown Southport, simply admiring the view. We gazed into the night sky and the tops of surrounding buildings. We finally broke the natural silence when we both spotted our friends, Forbes and Shaw Rogers, two blocks down the road, standing on top of the steeple of the Baptist church, smoking cigarettes. Have some self-respect, Zach mumbled to himself as he crossed his arms and glared at the Rogers brothers. I didn't really care what they were doing, but I wanted to show Zach that I support him and his opinion, so I said, "Yeah, get him, Zach." He and I bumped fists and then spent the next hour and a half quizzing each other on the genus and species of freshwater fish. It was getting late, and by the time he crawled down from the roof and walked back to my house, I had grown extraordinarily tired, but little did I know that the night had only just begun.
Oh, that's the stopping point
That's the
right
stopping
there.
point.
Go get the book, ladies and gentlemen. Camthology. Cameron Smith.
The next scene will blow your mind.
Oh, God. I know if Cam says it, it's the real deal, baby. Yeah. Dude, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Dude, thank you.
I hope I didn't mess this one up.
No, I hope I didn't either. I feel like I didn't have quite as high of energy as I did last time.
Dude, we got in there this time. Like, we talked about real stuff this time. I really enjoyed it.
I didn't lie to you this time.
You did. My lie detector never went off one time.
Wow.
So thanks for being honest, dude.
Yeah, you're welcome, dude.
Thanks for being honest. You guys go check out Cam's Instagram, Cumsmut, at Cumsmut, and check your YouTube channel out.
And when do you think this one will be out?
This one will be, what's today? Yeah, I'll have it done in a couple of days.
Okay.
I do, probably this coming Wednesday.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, April 13th, I'm doing a reading and book release signing event at Wine Knot.
Okay, cool.
So if you're a Wilmington local and you want to come hear me read more, Wine Knot, downtown Wilmington.
April 13th.
April 13th. Yeah.
What time?
6:30, I think.
6:30,
And then,
Wine
yeah, if you
Knot.
find me, come smut on Instagram. I've got links to that event, and you can get tickets and stuff.
Sweet. Cameron Smith
Jesus, burping.
on, yeah, you got to burp in the microphone. Cameron Smith on YouTube, but not the golfer.
Yeah. If you just search Cameron Smith, you're going to find the golfer. You have to type in, like, Cameron Smith comedian.
Okay, cool. You guys go over there and check him out. Definitely follow Cameron at Cumsmut on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching our podcast. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it. If you didn't like it and you're a hater, give it a thumbs down because any reaction is better than no reaction. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Cameron Smith, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Lex, for having me.
Thank you.
Hunt for Greatness podcast.